Whoa, I need to go. Yeah, go. Can't see anything. Whoa. Haul ass, bro. Just haul ass. Hadi. Go.
That is both incredible and terrifying. An escape from a wildfire in Nova Scotia. In the last couple of days, fires have broken out all over the province. More than 15,000 people have had to leave their homes. And the city of Halifax has declared a week-long state of emergency. Now, wildfires this time of year are pretty normal, but fires this big? No way. So there are two major fires in the province that are burning out of control right now. So that's the Barrington Lake fire in Shelburne County.
That fire was, at one point was thought to be under control on Saturday, and then it broke the containment overnight Saturday. So it's a serious fire.
Shelburne County is on the south shore of Nova Scotia. The fire in that area is more than 6,200 hectares large, which is really big, like 3 times the size of Halifax. The other fire is in Tantallon, the suburbs of Halifax, just 20 kilometers west of the city. That fire is much smaller, but only for now.
This fire has not been contained. This fire is not under control.
So if you compare this wildfire season to all of last year in terms of how much land has burned, this year is already more than twice as bad, and the wildfire season is only just starting. And look at the years before that. From 2018 to 2021, the number of hectares burned in a single year never even reached 1,000. And here we are in 2023 at 7 times that amount. On the surface, the problem here isn't rocket science. It's just the conditions.
Firefighters always hope to get through spring. We come out of winter and the ground cover is dry, it's brown, the vegetation hasn't taken on much hydration. When the green up happens, when everything's nice and green, then the spread of fire is much slower than it was earlier in the spring.
But this spring has been particularly dry.
The problem here was the fact that we haven't had any precipitation for an extended period of time. Fine fuels are extremely dry, and it's those fine fuels that carry the fire. Given the fact that the soils are so dry, the fine fuels are dry, it was perfect conditions for a fast, quick, dangerous fire.
And on top of that, keep in mind, just a few months ago, this entire region was hit by Hurricane Fiona, one of the most destructive weather events to hit the Atlantic provinces, downing tons of trees which have now had months to dry out, to become kindling, to fuel fires. There were a few other factors that contributed to this perfect storm, however, and for that, we've got David Phillips on the line. He's a senior climatologist with Environment Canada. Hi, Dave. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm well, Andrew. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. So hey, can we start with this? I mean, I understand drier conditions than normal, but explain for me, how dry are we talking? Like, explain that to me in terms I would understand.
Well, Andrew, it's really this forest fire situation, wildfire situation in the Maritimes has been, the seeds of this has been sown for a long time. I think if you went really back to Fiona, remember in September, my gosh, one of the most destructive hurricanes in Canadian history, it produced a lot of dead woods and branches and foliage on the landscape of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And so certainly that's been the kindling that has had 8 months to dry out. And then it's been very dry. I mean, first of all, the last 9 of the last 10 months have been warmer than normal in Nova Scotia. But since February, precipitation has been half of what they normally would get. Snowfall total was half of what they normally get. I mean, I've talked to farmers in Prince Edward Island that have been irrigating more in the last 2 weeks than they would in the whole months of July and August. April was one of the driest periods on record in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. So, I mean, the seeds of this has been sown a long time ago, and it begins with the fact that we just haven't had a lot of moisture and too warm and too dry for too long.
And that's astounding to hear because, I do tend to typically think of Nova Scotia and even the Maritime provinces as having this kind of natural immunity or at least resistance to wildfires because of how wet they are. But if precipitation has been that low, do we know why it's been that low? Like, it's easy for me to jump to, like, climate change is kind of the first thing I jump to, but is it that simple?
Well, I mean, it's a factor, but let's look at sort of the weather that we've had over the last little while. I mean, we've had in the situation we're into right now across most of Eastern Canada is a blocking situation. It's like a gridlock for weather. I mean, you're getting the same weather day after day and week after week. And we had a situation, a blocking situation in April and May. They had gorgeous weather in the Maritimes, sunny and dry, where Ontario was wet and cool and overcast. So too much of a thing is not necessarily a good thing. You want a balance in life and a balance in weather. So all of that warmth and dryness in April and May, great beer drinking weather, and happy to get into the spring and summer-like conditions. Hey, they're going to pay for it, and they're paying for it now because conditions are so dry. But we're seeing in Eastern Canada, we're in a blocking situation, the same weather day after day, and it's all tends to be dry and sunny. And where is the precipitation? And so that sometimes can get you into trouble. So I think from just a weather point of view, that is it. And also from a climate point of view, Andrew, I mean, there's clearly evidence to suggest that forest fire situation in Canada is getting worse, and it will get worse before it gets better.
You talk about the forest fire situation in Canada getting worse. So broadly speaking now, what are we anticipating maybe in the shorter term, in the near future? So not just in Nova Scotia, but countrywide.
Well, Andrew, I mean, the proof is there. I mean, we've already seen it. We don't have to wait for climate change. We've seen it show up in terms of the forest fire burning that's occurring across Canada. You know, in 1970, we would burn in Canada on an average about 1 million hectares a year. By 1990, that had grown to about 2.5 million hectares. In 2021, just 2 years ago, it was 4.1 million hectares. So the fire season is longer. It used to be a July and August situation. Now it's from April to October. The fires are larger, they're more widespread. The season is much longer. We're gaining about, I think, almost a week every decade that it's longer. A forest fire season for Alberta firefighters in British Columbia, hey, it's almost becoming a year-round thing. It's not just starts in May, it's starting in March or even February. So certainly we have seen the character and the personality of fires in Canada has increased because our climate has changed. It's warmer. I mean, it's increased the size and the frequency of forest fires. We have more lightning, and that can be the kind of ignition of fires. We have more people. That's not a climate thing, but more people visiting the forest and living in the forest and inadvertently setting fires to forests. And certainly, though, the warmth, the dryness, it is the thirsty atmosphere is just creating the environment, the atmosphere, to make these fires grow bigger and taller and hotter. And also, I mean, the weather and the climate has caused more ice storms to bring down trees, more diseased trees, so the kindling that's laying there. So all of the features that bring you raging forest fires, the ignition, the fuel, and the weather are all changing, and they're changing in a direction that says, hey, expect more of these in the years to come.
Dave Phillips, that's quite a portrait you paint. One last question for you. What's the silver lining? Where's the ray of hope, if there is one?
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, sometimes, weather's going to come, and maybe the hurricane season will change the situation in Atlantic Canada. I hope it's not that desperate that we have to go through. But Andrew, I don't see a lot of good news in the season ahead. We're calling for it. The weather we've seen is the weather we're going to get. Across the country, it is like hot, dry conditions from coast to coast to coast in June, July, August. Hey, this is the dress rehearsal to what will be likely a very active and wild fire season in Canada.
Dave Phillips, always insightful to talk to you. Thank you so much for making time with us. I appreciate that.